Governor Vilsack running here in Iowa, and you still kind of being the presumptive front runner, what kind of challenges do you foresee with the Vilsack candidacy versus yourself in Iowa?
Oh, well, I think the governor will be popular in his own state, and so I think he'll be a formidable candidate in Iowa. And it's the responsibility of myself and anybody else who's considering running here to make it clear what we stand for and what we want to do as president, so that I feel like I know the caucus scores pretty well. I've spent a lot of time here, and I know what they care about, and I feel like I understand them.
Senator, I wanted to ask you something about some of your foreign travels of late, since you've been doing a lot of it. You were on this Council for Foreign Relations with Jack Kemp, and you did a report. Do you think
on Russia, yeah.
On Russia, do you think that there's going to be a way to have the Russians engaged to help us negotiate with Iran?
That's a hard question. I don't. So far, they've not been very helpful, and I think actually what's happened with Russia is they've moved away in their relationship with America and the West, largely because they've moved away from democracy. Putin has sort of taken over centralized the government, got an iron hand on the country now, and the result is that it's harder for us to get them to do the things that they need to do. They don't pay a lot of attention to us. They pay a little more attention to us and the Europeans and the Japanese when we act together. But Russia plays a critical role, particularly in trying to deal with Iran in the UN Security Council.
When you were there, did you meet with Putin himself?
He was out of the country when I was there.
Senator?
Yes.
What economic actions would you take as president to improve the standard of living for those in poverty?
In the United States?
Yeah, in the United States.
There's a long answer to that. I'll try to give you a summary. This is something I've spent many days and weeks on. So the simplest things to do are to raise the minimum wage, which we actually did in 6 states in the last election. It ought to be done nationally, and I think it might, now that we've got a Democratic Congress. Organize workers into unions so that if they're working, they can earn a decent wage and be a part of the middle class. I think helping people save is another important idea, which means we set up these development accounts for lower income people so that we match what they're able to save. Our housing policy in this country is a complete disaster, and we've got to radically change our housing policy so that we create more mobility for lower income families and don't concentrate them all in the same neighborhoods, which is what we've done over the last few decades. Access to college, which is really critical to kids being able to have a better life. We've been cutting billions of dollars out of the budget for kids to be able to go to college, which is a mistake. What we ought to do instead, I believe, is something we have been doing called College for Everyone, which basically pays for the tuition for kids who are willing to work when they're in college. We're doing it on a small scale as a model in North Carolina. I think we also have some really very difficult structural issues in poverty, around poverty, that are harder to deal with. So, some of them are societal, some of them are cultural. When you spend a lot of time with low-income families, one of the things you see is a lot of young teenage women getting pregnant multiple times. And it's just, they live in poverty to begin with, they don't finish high school, they have 3 children by the time they're 16. It feels almost hopeless. I mean, how do you change a new generation over and over again? So dealing with this, issues like teenage poverty, teenage pregnancy, the whole problem of young, particularly African-American men who live in the inner city and feel like they're either going to die or go to prison and just kind of give up. And we have to find ways to reach them. There have been some very specific programs in communities around the country that have been very successful with that, as there have been with teenage pregnancy. But it's one of those things where it's hard to figure out exactly what the government's role is, other than to provide seed money and help for the local organizations who are mentoring and providing support for those families. Those, I think, are the big ideas. I mean, I would do things like create 1 million new housing vouchers, but not use them to concentrate people in the same neighborhoods. I think we ought to have 1 million new what I call stepping stone jobs for chronically unemployed people who want to go to work, but because they don't have the resume to get a decent job. we can find places for them to work in our parks, in our community centers, in public jobs. This is, I warned you to begin with, I can talk about this for hours, so I'll stop there because they're going to get nervous about the time. But this is something I've spent a huge amount of time on, and I have a lot of ideas about what we need to do.